Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Welcome back, dorks, nerds, bookworms, and welcome to first-time viewers to the Books by Adrian author platform and our flagship show, Livestream Sunday. If you are new, my name is Adrian Santiago. Hello, welcome to my channel, welcome to my show. I am your host today and every Sunday for the next, this is episode 6, so 10 more episodes this season. 10 more awesome guests, 10 more awesome shows. The schedule is available on the channel under the playlist for Livestream Sunday Season 3. So be sure to check that out and see who's coming up. I thank each and every one of you for being here. Thank you so much for your time and for your support on my author platform. Thanks for coming out. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the notification bell. It lets you know when I go live, not only when I go live with these Livestream Sunday episodes, but also when my podcast episode premieres and when any other videos premiere on my channel. And there should be some of those coming up pretty soon. We're streaming simultaneously both on YouTube and on Facebook. If you're watching us on Facebook, thank you so much for watching us. Please take a second to go over to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. Also like the stream and leave a comment if you can. Liking the stream, leaving a comment, subscribing, all these things helps the channel to grow and to find new people. So you would be helping us out tremendously if you did that. Alrighty, today's episode will feature 3 short segments totaling out to a 1-hour runtime. We'll take some questions from the chat in part 3, but I ask our audience to fill the chat with questions for that segment throughout the show so that I can collect them later and come back to them. Please start any questions with a big fat Q at the beginning so that I can easily identify them when I'm looking for them later. All right, enough of the boring stuff. Thanks for liking. Thanks for subscribing. Let's get our guest in here. Welcome to Books by Adrian, Mr. Nicholas Adams, author of The Angel's Secret. How are you today, sir?
I am good. Great to be here, Adrian. Nice to meet you.
It's an honor to have you. Nice to meet you. And hopefully there'll be some people. I know that we have some viewers, but nobody's been talking in the chat yet. Hopefully we'll have some people meeting you in the chat today as well. For everybody at home who doesn't know who you are and what you do, why don't you go ahead and give us a little rundown? Let us know who you are, where you're from, and what kind of stuff you write.
Okay. Well, in writing worlds, I go by Nicholas P. Adams. I live in the Salt Lake City, Utah area. I am married with 4 kids. I have a master's degree in architecture and 2 bachelors, one in architecture, one in pre-med. There's a long story behind that. I work for a high-end architecture interior design firm as their BIM manager, which means I tell people how to use the 3D design tools properly. I got into writing back around 2013. It's kind of odd that I'm one of those writers that was never really a reader as a kid. I got into reading when I married my wife. She loves books, she loves reading, and I got into reading by reading to her at night so she could go to sleep before I started snoring. And it just a few years later, I just kind of caught the bug, and there was a story in my head and no one else wrote it. So I saw the advice saying, if there's a book out there that hasn't been written, you have to write it. So I did. And that became The Angel's Secret. And since then, I've written some short stories and published in anthologies and won a few awards from Writers of the Future. And I am excited about my upcoming epic fantasy novel that I'll be launching in November. So real close.
Wow, man. Okay, so a lot to dig into there. First of all, the story with you and your wife is the cutest thing I've ever seen. Uh, you would read to her so that she would fall asleep. You know, my wife falls asleep when I read to her, but not because like she like she just zonks right out. The two sentences is she doesn't hear anything I read, so we don't really do that.
Yeah, it all started with Harry Potter. I would read Harry Potter to her, and then
Nice.
I would have to recap the chapter from the night before because she missed at least half of it. And then I
Sure.
would start reading, and I would just, my voice, the dulcet tones of my voice would just lull her to sleep. But that's how she could get to sleep before me, so she didn't have to try and sleep to my snoring.
Well, I like it. I like it a lot. Now, let's talk about the angel's secret. You say that you started reading, you got hooked on reading, and suddenly there was a story in your head. Tell us a
Hmm.
little bit about because I know a little something about that too, man. Like, and not even just having stories that are birthed in your head, but sometimes just a character. I've one of the
Hmm.
characters in my upcoming novel lived in my head for years before I put her in this book. And I tried putting her in other stories. I tried putting her in a Western once and I just kept trying to find like a spot for her and she wasn't fitting in anything. And then like a puzzle piece, she just fit right into this thing and took off. So tell us a little bit about that, about the journey of discovering the angel's secret.
Well, for a long time, I really loved dystopian stories, mostly in movie form. Once in a while, I'd, see a book or I'd read a book here and there. And I just had this kind of future dystopian world that I just love to daydream about. Like, what kind of technology would they have? What would they take today and what would it look like in 1,000 years? And, what would culture and society be like? And what kind of classes would we be dealing with? So that's really kind of how it started um, and I started just thinking of the idea of like, what would a slave look like in the future?
Mm.
We talk about that there are still people in slavery, and are robot slave, but they have no free will. So is that really a slave? And I just started exploring this idea: is would there be something out there that could be considered a slave, but if they're not sentient, are they a slave? And so that's really kind of the gist of it. And I just had to start writing it down. I knew how I wanted the story to start. I knew how it was going to end, but I didn't know anything in between. So I was completely pantsing from the opening paragraph
To
all the
the
way,
close.
trying to find my way to that final scene that I had in my head.
You know that it's pretty interesting to think that you weren't a big reader and then you had this story in you. If anything, that just serves to support the theory that stories are kind of ethereal and kind of come from another place, and you're sort of
We're
what's the word?
conduits.
Exactly, a conduit. Thank you. So that's fascinating, man. So what did you learn writing this first book? Because I'll tell you what, that middle part was the biggest problem for me, and I outlined, and I still had a huge trouble with the middle. And my first draft, I consider it a mess, and the mess, I know exactly where it is, and it's all in the middle. So my edit is going to be a real pain in the butt. So what did you learn about writing this first novel and pantsing the middle like you did?
What I learned is I had no idea what I was doing.
Yes.
In one of the reviews, which at first just really got under my skin, but afterwards I should like send this guy an Amazon gift card as a thank you. But his review was, "This is a perfect example of what not to do."
Mm.
Um, I mean, I enjoy doing it, and I leave it up on my Amazon page just so that I will say, yeah, I started really rough. So
Yeah.
anybody that reads this, I still love the story, but I wrote it. I didn't write it badly. I organized it badly, and I just made all kinds of rookie mistakes. And I leave it
Did you
there as a reminder that every time you write something, you're going to learn from it, and your next story will be better. And hopefully my subsequent stories have proved that, and my stories in the future will continue to prove that, because you don't know what you don't know, but you can always learn from your mistakes, as long as you acknowledge them.
And I like what you're saying about leaving it up. You know what I mean? Pretty much everyone agrees that a writer's first book is usually their worst, or ultimately will always be their worst, because you're only going to get better and better as a writer as you go. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we gotta leave it up, right? Warts and all. I've talked about that on this channel before, about the idea of going back on subsequent reprints and re-editing it, and just kind of fixing it up a bit. And I don't see anything wrong with that either. It's your book, I might end up doing that myself, but there is
Yeah.
something really Did you go through a professional edit at all, or did you just edit it yourself
No,
and
I
put it
mean,
out?
it was all on my own. I had no budget. I had no money. I think I paid a cousin like $500 to read through it as an editor, because she loves books. Um, but I had no idea the complexity and everything that was involved in writing a story. I was
Yeah.
just one of those people that's like, oh yeah, a writer just sits down in front of a typewriter, and 3 weeks later they have a best-selling novel, and it just magically comes together. And I had no idea all of the time and preparation and thought, and I mean, there's so much involved in it, and it's not an individual. There are so many people involved.
Mm.
Um, so like with The Heir of the First Tower, I mean, I hired a developmental editor. I hired a proof editor. I hired, artists to help me, get an idea of these characters. I mean, I hired professionals to help me bring my ideas to life, because I don't have all the skills. And I think that's definitely the thing I learned in my first attempt with Angel's Secret is I had no idea how much is involved in creating something that we take for granted as a wonderful story that carries us into another world.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't really appreciate that, do we, until we have to do it ourselves. The whole thing with how much work it takes to make a novel and how many people. One of the things that one of the sort of slogans, if you will, of this new platform that I'm launching with my partner pretty soon is the idea that no author does it alone. And even the ones who do everything still are not doing it alone. There's so many people involved in the process, and so many different moving parts. And for those of us that do every part of it ourselves, one author is not doing one job. You're doing 9 to 12 jobs. Like, it's
Mhm.
ridiculous how much work it is. And that is not even touching upon the idea that you have to write the thing and make it good, something enjoyable that people are gonna pick up and want to spread around. Um, I thought I knew what I was getting into when I sat down to write my novel. I really did think I knew what it took to write a novel, and to this day, I'm still learning that no, there's so much you don't know, man. There's so much involved in it. Um, when releasing your next book, what will you do differently from the last publishing project?
Um, well, this time I'm definitely trying to do it right. I'm trying to do it from the approach of a publisher. So, I mean, I don't have an agent. I don't have a big publisher. I have a small press who's going to be putting it under their banner. But I started preparations for launch back in March. So I knew I needed time to make sure the editing was all finished. I needed time to find a cover artist. I hired a publicity team, a local publicity team, just to help me. It's like, all right, teach me how to, publicize myself better on social media. Help me with this, help me set up podcasts, help me find book tours. It's like I'm treating this almost like a small business where I'm hiring
That's
professionals
exactly what it is.
to do the things that I don't have time to do myself, or that just don't have the expertise to do myself. I just finished a commission for a logo. I commissioned a logo for my series that is not in the book, and it's something that's very personal to me. It is from the book, and
Mm.
I'm going to be trademarking it. I'm going to be, making some stickers that I can hand out at the book launch. I'm going to make, using it for the, bookmarks, and I'm just treating this like, okay, this is a small business. This is my marketing campaign, and this is just what I have to do to
Hmm.
try and, just get out there. So I'll have a launch, and hopefully my writer friends will show up, and hopefully a few key people that I know or are related to will like buy one, or at least have a picture taken with one. Hey, you never know.
Yeah.
So I am treating it like a business launch.
Well, it is a business launch. It is a small business. It does take several different people that you're going to be commissioning to do different things. Artists, publishers, printers, all kinds of people, formatters, editors, chiefly among them. Definitely don't skip the professional edit on your next book. I always preach that. I'm not even at that phase yet, and I still tell people never skip the professional edit. Um, I like what you're talking about with the logo and everything. The logo coming from the book is really really good. It's a nice touch. As you can see by my layout and by the artwork that I sent you, I've been through the same thing. I've been through a branding designer and that whole process, and that's where this new launch came from, and where the new platform is coming from as well.
Very
Um,
cool.
I wanted to pause for a minute and acknowledge the chat. Guys, for some reason, I am once again having some sort of trouble with StreamYard's chat display. It's not showing me anything. So I have the actual YouTube stream pulled up, and I can see the chat and I see everything that you guys are saying. I can't display any of it on my screen. So I apologize. Today, the chat will not be showing up on the screen, but still ask your questions. I'm still going to ask them. In fact, I might even copy and paste them onto the screen so they still show up for everybody. Okay. So please make sure that you do that. And Mr. Adams, you were so good when you first came out here at pitching not only yourself but your book, that we went right into the interview, and I forgot to play the little animation at the beginning, which I am contractually obligated to do. So let's go ahead and throw that up. And by contractually obligated, I just mean I made the thing. I- I'm gonna show
And you got to throw it up.
it. So we're in the interview part, and this is good because we get to go back a little bit and get more personal with you again. So let's turn that down a bit. So I myself only have one sibling, but my extended family is quite large, and my parents are both from very big families with a lot of siblings. Um, Big families are their own kind of special, I think. And I saw that you're one of, is it 6 siblings?
One of 7 siblings. I'm
One
third of
of
7,
7. Gotcha.
like a
Um,
board. I'm 3 of
and
7.
so so third
Third oldest.
oldest. Got it. Okay. All right. That's making sense. Um, how do you think that your position in the litter has affected your life? Do you think that there are things about who you are and how you live that come out of the fact that you are third of 7?
Oh, there's been so many psychological studies showing that there are classic personality traits of which sibling of which number. And I've read the ones describing, the third of 7 child, even specifically the, third male. And it definitely, yeah, I definitely resonate with many of the stereotypes. Like, I kind of was always, by myself. I just was
Mm-hmm.
comfortable being by myself. My oldest brother, he was kind of he was the third adult growing
Mm-hmm.
up, just because, also because there's an age gap between him and my older sister. My older sister was the mini mom, all of those stereotypes and family tropes you can think of. I
Yeah.
definitely fit in. Um, being the third and being, just used to spending a lot of time by myself, it definitely, I developed, um, I was very a daydreamy kid. I got in trouble in 3rd grade a lot for getting caught daydreaming instead of focusing on the task at hand. I mean, it's like I can't really blame kids these days. School's kind of boring, and unless a teacher's really engaging, But then there's me who it's like, okay, I already get this, so I'm gonna wander away mentally for a little while. Um, and it has its negatives as well. Being a daydreamer, um, there are negative traits of daydreaming too much or living in a fantasy world too much. And I can relate to that too. I won't get into it. But yeah, with growing up with a lot of siblings, there was a lot of fights. But these days, those six people are my best friends in the world. I go to them with everything. If I have a question or concern or there's a joke I need to share, we have a sibling text group
Yeah.
that is, at least a few things a day, and sometimes it's just blowing up like 20 messages in a row because there's some kind of thing going on or something really funny, and we all just think we're hilarious, so we all have to add our one liners and just keep it going, and then 3 hours later it finally dies off. But yeah, um, they're my best friends. They're my biggest supporters next to my wife.
Same here. My biggest supporter next to my wife is my sister. And I only have the one, but yes, she's my best friend. I mean, we text every day pretty much. We get into weird like GIF wars where like we're just communicating with GIFs. There's no words being spoken. We're just GIFing each other all day. Ridiculous. Makes no sense, but that's who we are. Um
Awesome.
all right. So give our audience the elevator pitch to your novel. The one that came out and anything you want to share about the one upcoming we'll get to after that.
Okay, so the angel secret and then the air. All right, elevator pitch of
The
the
air.
angel secret. um, it's been so long. I know.
You can do it. I believe in you.
So basically, in a world where technology has just eliminated inconvenience, one one pilot finds out something that totally turns her world upside down, where a class of people that are praised as, angels from heaven, they have a secret, and that secret is even more, I can't think of the word, not demonic. It's more insidious than she first thought. There's
Malevolent.
there's an insidious secret behind the angels. That's kind of the elevator pitch. I mean, I wrote that 7 years ago.
Yeah. Right on. Right on. And what would you say it's sci-fi or fantasy? It sounds more fantasy than sci-fi, but
I like stories that blur the edge.
me
It's
too.
set in a technological world, but there are definitely just some fantasy kind of pseudo magic
Mm-hmm.
things to it. I mean,
Mm-hmm. It
it's
sounds like
more
my book.
close.
You're describing my book.
It's more of a sci-fi, but not hard science, not even close to hard science. Just like the Star Wars.
Yeah.
People think it's a sci-fi, but really it's a fantasy.
I say that all the time. It's a sci-fi fantasy. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with my. See, for me, the sci-fi is, especially in the first book, it's more of a setting, a time and a place
Mhm.
that we're in. It's this sort of sci-fi world, but the fantasy stuff is what's creeping in from this other place. And then by the time we get to the second book and we're in both, now we have a full blown sci-fi world and a full blown fantasy world, and we're off to the races. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. As they say, sci-fi has spaceships, fantasy has trees.
Walking trees usually. Um, I see a lot of evolution in your education leading up to you actually ending up writing a novel. What drew you to each of these fields of study, and what drew you away from one to the next one?
Okay. Well, I started out my education pursuing medicine,
Hmm.
partly because I just really loved the topics. I loved studying the human body, anatomy. I was pretty good at it. I also, I just wanted to have a good living. I wanted to be comfortable. What killed it for me was my last year of my undergrad. I was like 3 or 6 months away from graduating I had applied to medical schools, hadn't gotten in anywhere yet. And I was volunteering at an ER because, I wanted to kind of get that experience. And at the time, that was like the big show on TV, the ER with Anthony Edwards, Goose.
Mhm.
And I went to go do it. And oh my
Was that
gosh,
before George Clooney or after George Clooney?
it was before George Clooney.
Okay. Gotcha.
So this was 1998 is when I was volunteering in an ER. And, I'm helping out, and there are some situations where I'm just, oh, this is so great. I feel like I'm helping people. And then the hardest thing for me to deal with, though, was the family members of somebody that had to come in for emergency services. They were the ones I couldn't deal with because they're like, what's going on? Who can I talk to? Where's the doctor? Who's in charge? And I'm like, I'm wearing a pink coat. I'm a volunteer. I don't know anything. And at that time, I was much shyer than I
Yeah.
am now. I mean, I was very reserved, and it was very uncomfortable for me to be in that situation. I'm like, I don't think I can do this. I mean, if I could just get through medical school and become a surgeon and never actually have to talk to family members, I could handle this, but that's not realistic.
Like a mechanic where they just bring in the thing and you fix the thing and they wheel it out, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
and
kind of the detachment that you want.
handles
Yeah.
they're the face of the hospital or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I just really started to rethink my path. It's like, this
Mhm.
is not where I want to end up. I'll be miserable. It'll just suck. And I don't want to become just so hardened that I have no empathy for the family whose son or daughter I just operated on because I wanted to be a surgeon. So I then floated around for a couple of years.
It's good
I
to figure
worked,
that out sooner rather than later. Sorry to interrupt, but just
yeah,
it's good that
yeah,
you you
better
you
than
were able
one
to.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue.
So floated around for a couple of years. I worked for Wells Fargo credit card incoming calls. I moved in with my brother in Chicago for a few months, just a change of scenery, and ended up working as a temp on a construction site in the construction office, just doing
Okay.
paperwork and filing. And that's what sparked my path of architecture. I was like,
Mm.
this is really cool. Watching a building go from just an empty field to seeing the process of building something that becomes permanent. And I think that kind of also started um, the fuel of writing because there's a lot of similarities between designing a building and writing a book. You have to have an idea to start with, the design, then you have to figure out how you're going to make that design a reality. And so I went back to school, studied architecture, got my second bachelor's, went on, got my master's, worked in Phoenix for 7 years, came back to Utah, been here since 2012. But I think it was about then, after moving back to Utah, that this writing bug really started to just not go away. And that's when I just like, I'm just going to write something,
Yeah.
even if it flops, which, frankly, it's not like my book is known to anybody outside of, 10 families in my neighborhood. That was a joke.
Until today.
Till today. Anyway, um, so I wrote it, and then I found out in my neighborhood there was a writers group started by a friend of
Nice.
mine, Rick Bennett, and he's had his own ad agency for years. So he started this writing group. He started writing, and he's like, hey, let's just get a bunch of people together who like writing. We'll share our work and we'll critique each other, and that's what really got it started.
Mm.
And so, we've been attending that for going on 6 years, third Thursday of every month. We bring our work and we share it and we critique and we offer insight and advice. And, mostly it's, okay, what were you trying to say here? Okay, I didn't get that. So, you need to work that out. Or, I really
Mhm.
love this. And if you add that, it'll just totally send it to the next level. And it's down to three of us, but between the three of us, I think we've really helped each other grow as writers just by
That's good.
having someone with a different style
Hmm.
look at your work in its rough form and just help you see it more objectively. And I think that is
Yeah.
a key that every writer needs to be able to do, is look at their writing objectively and not as, oh, look at my darlings. I wrote this. Isn't it brilliant?
Agreed. Yeah. There's this like resistance that a lot of writers have, at least in the beginning, to fixing things or changing things that people read their readers have problems with. And it comes from a very defensive place because, like you say, it's their darlings. They're putting their stuff out into the world. But what they have to understand is when it's coming from somebody who knows what they're talking about, it's coming from a place of wanting to help you fix your story, making it better, and helping it reach more people and be more enjoyable to more people. And I think once writers learn that, they almost immediately become better writers and become better editors because they'll open themselves up. I keep saying that I'm doing a pretty hard edit of my draft before I send it off to editors, and yet when I get it back, I want to see as much red as possible. I want to see red
Mhm,
everywhere. I want to see every little thing that I could fix to make this thing even better, because I know that the story is good, but now I want everybody else to see that, and they can't see it if
mhm,
it's full of not just I'm not just talking typos. I'm talking about the flow of it, the actual like structure of the arcs, all of that stuff. Word count,
mhm,
even, it comes down to like it's a science to create a beautiful work of art that is a novel. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Um,
I think, just real quick, I think there's also a
yeah,
difference between a critique and criticism.
exactly,
This is something I experienced in the architecture world in school. You have to pin up your designs and you have to defend it. You have to explain what's going on. And there are going to be people that ask questions like, okay, well, why did you do this? And you'll give your answer. Okay, well, what you could have done, or what would have made more sense, is to do that. And now that's a critique, showing you where there's an opportunity you missed, maybe because you just didn't know it was there. And then there's criticism. Well, I don't like that. It looks ugly. It's distracting. That's when somebody's pointing out your typos instead of, well, did you read the story or are you just finding
exactly.
the typos?
Yeah, you're
And
just
I
looking
think
for
that's
stuff to
something
pick
that,
at.
yeah, every young writer has to be able to differentiate what is a critique, because a critique is trying to help you, versus criticism, where
Right.
they're just trying to find something to say, and maybe they don't realize that, okay, a typo, so what? A typo can be
Yeah.
fixed. A character arc, that's a bigger problem.
Now, you're still working as an architect while you're writing your books, yes?
Yes,
So I
because
find
I
it
can afford not to.
right. So I find it surprising that you mostly pantsed your first book. Did that change for your second one? Did you go more heavy into the outlining phase and into the pre, writing phase? Um, are you still pantsing? How are you going about it? Because an architect builds everything out, like knows exactly measurements to everything that you need.
Yes, to a
How does
degree.
that affect you?
So I'm going to address the architecture part first.
Yeah.
So you have the design you want it to be, but as you're fleshing it out, as you're laying down walls and placing doors and windows and furniture, you're discovering, oh, I can't have this door here. It's too close. I need to move that over. So there's still some adjustment. You have a
Mm,
master idea, but I think you're constantly fine tuning the design to make sure that every part and piece works. Yeah, when I started, I was definitely a pantser, 100% pantser. Um, and then I stepped away from trying to write novels at the advice of my writers group friend, and I focused on writing short stories. Just learn how to have an idea, get it concise, and actually that's when I started planning out more. With each story I wrote, I planned more. And as I planned more, I think every story got better. And so now with my current one, um, I planned it out all out myself, but on my work in progress that I've got on the back burner at the moment, I actually hired a developmental editor, and we spent 8 hours, 4 2-hour sessions, and just, okay, what's the beginning? What's the ending? What's the mid? And just planning, just getting all of these
Mhm.
ideas down and putting them in the right spot. So now
Mhm.
when I open up that manuscript to work on it, I have my scene, there's my notes. This is what I need to write today. And this is the emotion I'm trying to get to. And these are like the beats I need to hit, or these are what I need to describe. This is why I'm writing this scene. And I feel like then the pants part is just exploring, okay, I haven't created every single detail of this little world or this room, but now I get to. Now I get to just go with whatever, as long as I'm hitting these things I need to get in this scene or in this chapter. So
Yeah.
I have definitely converted to a planner, and I'll call it a plantser, because there's
Yeah.
always going to be that degree of
Those adjustments
exploration.
and
And
exploration.
you'll find something when you write one chapter, you're like, oh, this is really good. I need to adjust, chapter down here,
Mhm.
because I'm going to reincorporate that, or I'm going to recall back to it because this is something that I discovered that's really cool.
I've told this story before on this channel, but it's been a while. I in the early days of writing this novel, I would let a few people very, very close to me whose opinions I very highly respect and count on to make my stuff better. My sister and my best friend since second grade. I give him a couple of chapters, and one of them was the introduction for Lear. My second. Hey, buddy, we lost you for a
Sorry
second.
about that. I had a little internet hiccup.
That's all right. I just kept going, but let me back up a little bit. So
Sorry.
no, you're good. So I gave my buddy some chapters to read, and one of them was the introduction to like one of my main characters, my second one, Lear, and he starts off his chapter at the bar, waiting his turn to go see the boss, and I wanted in this introduction to give him somebody to talk to that meant something to him. He's sitting at a bar, so most likely he's going to be talking to either another person or to the bartender, but I wanted a personal connection. So I made the bartender his sister, just so that there would be a familiarity between them and that the conversation could go a little more organically. And what ended up happening was when I got my chapters back from my friend and I asked him who his favorite character of that particular chapter was, he named the sister, Harley, who I only created for this scene, only for the purpose of this one thing. I had no plans for her. I had no backstory for her even.
Mhm.
And I asked him why he liked her so much. She had a couple of lines. She was only in it for a little bit. And he points out, well, she poured her brother a drink without him asking for it. And when he said that, it was such a tiny little detail, but to him seemed so important that to me it sparked a million ideas about their backstory together as brother and
Mhm.
sister. And all of a sudden, she was a huge character in my head. And now, by like her minor arc in this first book ends in a huge fashion, setting her up as one of the main players in the second and third book. And she's incredibly significant to the end of my story. I had to go all the way back to the outlines for my series and adjust the outline because all of a sudden I had a whole other arc going
Mhm.
on with this character. And now she's gonna bring more of like the cyberpunk energy to the series. Um, so yeah, you have to leave room for these adjustments and these little things that might become big things that make your story so much better, and your story would have been lacking something without it, like you
Yeah.
never know.
I had
So
a similar experience with a
yeah.
character in The Angel's Secret. He started out just as like a minor thug,
Mm.
and but I just really liked. He was deliciously evil, and
You
just
gotta
just
love
to the
those.
point that I had to change things around to make him a more prominent character. So I had to go back and rewrite and add some early material to show how he is much more intrinsic to the overall plot. And I plan on eventually someday writing a sequel. And he's a minor villain in Angel's Secret, but he will become the major villain in the sequel. And it just turned out because of an
Mm-hmm.
interaction between him and another character. It was like, okay, you're really interesting. I need to have more of you, so we're gonna revise a few things. So I totally relate to um, the bartender becoming a greater character than
Yeah.
you had originally planned.
Did you have plans for a series, or has that sort of evolved now? Like now you're going to be writing a
Um,
sequel.
it more evolved. I mean, I always like to leave my stories open enough at the end that there could be some kind of a sequel, or it could just remain as a standalone.
Hmm.
Um, but I had started writing the second book, and then that's when I got advised, hey, just focus on some short stories, get your structure down, because I
Yeah.
was just winging it again.
Write the end as many times as possible. Like get, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, and because of that, because of all those short stories, I have 7 honorable mentions from Riders of the Future. So it
that's fun.
wasn't time wasted at all. I definitely honed my abilities, um, just forcing myself to write small, write
Yeah.
smaller, just really focus on what is absolutely important to telling this story,
Yeah.
and
That's like going to
get
the
rid of the
gym.
fluff.
Yeah, for a writer, that's going to the gym, is cranking out a whole bunch of short stories and flash fictions and just getting your structure down, figuring out how to tell a story.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And then reading, reading is eating your veggies. Like you got to do that too. So, uh, do you have any writing time rituals? Do you have any particular things that you have to do every time you write in order to have a successful writing session? Are you
Um,
ritualistic that way?
well, I definitely need quiet. I am
Hmm.
not the kind that has any kind of music in the background. I mean, even like, massage music where it's just these weird flutes and stuff.
Yeah.
That's just totally distracting. I need absolute silence. Um, I need to feel energized. So if I'm like really tired, or if something's just mentally drained me from work related,
Yeah.
I can't write unless I feel like I'm alert.
Hmm.
So whether that means I just need to take a quick nap, just to kind of shut down the eyes, just reset. Um, I think the only other ritual is I can really only write here in my office. It's like this is my little creative cocoon. And outside, I'll get ideas and I may scratch some things down or email myself. But if I'm just going to write, I'm here, it's quiet. Usually during the times when my kids are either quiet or out or playing or it's just somewhere else and there's not a lot of noise. If there's a little bit, I'll get in enough of a zone that I can kind of ignore it. But if I'm, for the most part, I just need to be here and it needs to be quiet. So maybe someday I just need to get some noise canceling headphones and better insulate the walls and ceilings.
Yeah, I always need like focus music or cinematic scores. Anything without any lyrics to it. As soon as somebody starts singing, I'm distracted. I can't write. So, but I do need music. I need like some kind of just some sort of rhythm to go with. And it'll often influence what's happening on the page. I'll pull up Thriller's soundtracks, not Michael Jackson's Thriller, but like
Right.
Thriller story soundtracks. And as the music like reaches the climax, like it's chaos on the page, and then as it's wrapping back down, like it really does guide how I write sometimes, and it makes for fun editing the next day because I always edit the next day. I edit what I wrote the day before. Um,
Yeah,
what's the
I
next
tend to
book
do that
you're
too.
oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I tend to, yeah, before I feel comfortable calling a chapter done,
Mm,
it'll be a few days and I'll start reading it the next day. Like, okay, let's make sure it's the way I need it to feel and I'm hitting the beats I need. And it's like, oh no, tweak that a little bit and then I can continue. And
mm.
yeah, I edit as I go. So I typically don't do more than one, two drafts. So there's the rough draft, the initial first pass, and then there'll be my editing pass. And then once I'm all done with a work, that's when I'll then hand it off to a structural editor. It's like, okay, you take a full look at it because I'm too close to it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to see glaring issues because my brain is filling in the mistakes.
Well, all this structure talk is a good segue to the next part of our show here. So we're talking about resources for new writers. On your website, you have a resources tab, and when you go there, you've got, actually, I believe I have it pulled up right here. Let's share this for folks at home. Um, Here we go. So on Mr. Adams' beautiful website, here, come on, where are you? There you are. All right. He's got a resources tab and a couple of different resources for new writers and writers looking to get better. I particularly am interested in helping writers become authors. I like the distinction there. So,
Yeah.
where does this kind of come from for you? Having these resources on your website, what's your connection to these in particular?
So these are all places that I've either used or go to. I mentioned Writers of the Future before. It's a international contest. There's no fees, um, but it's one of the biggest writing contests in the world for sci-fi and fantasy. David Farland, he's the author of the Rune Lord series. He's also the head judge of Writers of the Future currently, and he has a newsletter. And every day, there's a tip on how to be a better writer. And often he does a series where it's a theme. Like one series is he talks about writing to the senses, getting outside, getting beyond writing to sight and sound, but adding smell, adding visceral, adding touch,
Mm-hmm.
and just
Mm-hmm.
really exploring what your character is seeing, feeling, touching, tasting in the world. Um, the helping writers become authors. Her name is Kim Weiland, brilliant author. I really like her work. She's written, what was it called? Dream something. The idea is that when we go to sleep, we actually are a person in another world. And then when we're awake, it's that person is asleep. So one soul is shifting between two worlds. And she just has so much resources on character arcs and story arc. And I mean, just there's so much material here. So in the early days when I had questions, I do a Google search and half the time her post would pop up. So I just started going to her first. So yeah, she's great. She's got a lot of really, and it helps explain what it is you're trying to accomplish as a writer from that structural point of view, why you need to write it a certain way or why you need to do certain things so that your story is successful, not
Mm.
just telling good prose, but so that your hero's journey ends where it needs to be so that the reader has an emotional tie to it so that
Yeah.
they actually enjoy the experience. The Manuscript Doctor, they're a group of editors here locally, and they offer editing services. So I've used them many times on short stories and even the first chapter of um, The Heir of the First Tower. And they've been very helpful at looking at my stories and like, okay, you need to add this, your character is missing something here. And they give a lot of great suggestions. And they just really helped me recognize the mistakes I was making or the holes that I didn't see, because I just didn't have the experience to see it. So they're a great editing resource. The others, honestly, I put them on there because I think I corresponded with the people there. I'm like, hey, you seem like a cool guy.
You're not as connected to these as you are to the other.
Right. Yeah, I'll throw you on my resources page just because I've used you or I've interacted. But yeah.
Where'd you go for your photos? Who took your photos?
The
They're really good.
studio is called Photo Umbra here in Utah. And we talked about what I was hoping to accomplish. My original author photo was me hiding my face, and I turned it black and white and pixelated it, and I had that as my brand for years. But I decided when I was going to launch Heir of the First Tower, I was actually going to show my face in public now. So I wanted to get just some new author photos. I really like this series because for me, it's a tie-in with the old, don't look at my face, read my words. That was my message behind it. But for this, it was see the good, hear the good, say the good, and write the good.
Beautiful.
So
nice.
that's kind of my mission statement in visual form.
That's awesome. In that case, go ahead and tell us about the Heir of the First Tower. Is that what it's called? The Heir of the First Tower?
Yeah, the Heir of the First Tower, HEIR, not AI, not AIR. Even though it's a little ironic because my characters are all flying people. So the heir.
Appropriate, yeah.
It is the topics I cover, or at least I wanted to explore, were prejudice, not really racism, but I'm just drawing a total mind blank. Just cultural, political, religious preconceptions, and how different cultures treat each other because of their own traditions, because of what they believe, what they know, what they think is right. And it's all about a warrior prince who doesn't want to be a warrior, wants to find another way to end the battles between his clan and their primary rival. And he thinks that if he can cure a disease, that the two clans can stop fighting over this single resource, because that single resource is what creates a cure for his people. And there's also a secondary main character. She's been a wanderer her whole life. She's been kept isolated and alone in the company of only the world's deity. And she finally is told to interact with a group of people, and they become her friends and family. And she's just constantly worried that she may have to go back on her own again, or she's going to lose what she has. She's, really wants to just have a family, have that connection that she never had her whole life. And she feels like it's always at risk of being taken away because of just everything going on in the world. So, and they're trying to accomplish their goals in the middle of being treated poorly by some, being treated well by others. And it's just this exploration of how different are people really? Because everyone's got an issue, or everyone has an idea, but that doesn't mean that, are there ideas that are better than others? And should some ideas be discouraged and others promoted?
The chat has finally provided us with a few questions, and we have about 5 minutes left in the show. So we're going to switch over to that now too, and continue to talk about your book in there.
Okay.
So These questions come from Mr. Barrett Laurie, who always asks really, really good questions. First up, what have you learned the most about yourself as a writer through your writing process?
That I still have so much to learn.
Amen
I
to
mean, I
that.
think I think I do get better, each time. But because of that, I think it just it reinforces the idea that I don't know what I don't know. There is
Mm,
so much out there. There are so many ideas to explore. There are so many ways to express those ideas. And I get to learn different ways each time I try something new. Like I always wrote in third person until my current work in progress. Actually, no, that's not true. My last two short stories were first person, and that was very new to me. I always wrote third person, past
mhm,
tense, because I'm this storyteller.
mhm.
But I never tried to tell a story from the mindset of my character.
Yeah.
And I really learned a lot about myself and just how skilled writers who are very good at writing that first person story, how there it's a talent
Yeah.
that, I mean, I think anybody can learn it, but I think there are some that are just gifted to it. And I'm one of those that I'm definitely having to learn it because I still, in the editing process, I'm just like my tenses are in past, present, future. So I don't know what I don't know. That's what I've learned as a writer in this process.
Best
Best
money you've
money,
spent as
best
an
money I've
author.
spent. It's definitely cover art. Hiring a cover artist will help sell my story because they can put together visually something that I've got. Let me real quick. I want to pull up. Um,
Please do. To
let's
piggyback
see.
on what you're saying right now, part of the, even if you are an artist yourself, part of the advantage of going to an artist and commissioning them to do your cover is that not only is it does it have to be a beautiful image, but as it has to work as a cover to draw the eye and make it move from the top to the bottom. There's an art there's an art to creating a book cover. Um, Go ahead and throw up whatever you need to share up here as soon as I get it. All right, here it is. Is it ready to go?
Yep.
All right.
All right. So this is the cover for my first short story that I wrote, Imprint. And working with the artist, I gave her the synopsis of the story. I had already done like my own mock-up of what I thought a cool cover would be. And
Right.
it's just like it's a stick figure in comparison. And
Yeah.
being able to go
Yeah.
back and forth and say, okay, well, it's going to be a woman on the cover. And the first round, it made it look like Alien. It was like, it's not Alien, there's technology. And so she threw the electrical circuits on there. And the fact that one of the nodes hits right over the eye because
Right on the eye.
one of my characters is actually a synthetic person. So I'm like, they just bring it all together. And it's just such a gorgeous cover that, I mean, for me, this is a piece of art itself. Forget my
Yeah.
story. I love
Yeah.
this cover. And
Great
the
cover.
cover of the story as it is. So hiring cover artists is definitely worth it. Also,
It's such a subtle touch too. The little techie lights, like you say, the one that lines up right over the eye. It's such a nice little subtle touch that tells so much and just makes you want to know more. It makes you want to read more.
and then the other best investment
Oh,
is,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, is hire an independent structural and copy editor.
Mhm.
Someone who
There you go.
has never seen the story, so they're looking at it fresh. They're going to be able to see all of its strengths and weaknesses and point out, where you can improve. And and also because they're getting paid to do this, they're not just criticizing your work, they are critiquing it. They
Hmm.
are trying to help you make it better. So, yeah, those
What's
are
your
the
advice
two
for
main
a
things.
newbie that's just starting out?
Uh, learn and listen and learn. So one of the things I also did starting out was I went to every writing convention I could take time off for. And I just signed up for every single course on, self-editing, marketing, just all of the hard stuff, not the fun. Let's talk about, sci-fi versus fantasy, which is better. It's I wanted to learn more. How do I better look at my work objectively? So going to writing conventions, and then like I did, I would say, if you really want to develop as a writer, write short stories. Get used to telling short stories, because a novel is just a series of short stories. It's a novel is a serial of short stories, really.
Absolutely. My novel only exists or will exist because I wrote a short story that became the prologue to a novel that became the first novel in a trilogy. Like, it just kind of all spawned out of that. And I treat every single chapter like a short story. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And it has to tell a complete little arc every single chapter. So
Yep, it's
agreed.
dominoes.
Absolutely.
It's taking you from one to the next, because your story is different from the beginning than the end. So yeah,
Mr. Nicholas Adams, thank you so very much for coming today, man. I'm gonna give you a minute here.
You're fun to talk to.
Oh, I'm glad that you think so, because we're gonna do it for a little longer. Thanks for coming, man. I'm gonna give you a second here, give you the spotlight. Go ahead and tell the folks at home where they can find your stuff. Your links are down below, but go ahead and list them out for them. Let them know where they can find you, what they can look forward to seeing from you next, and anything else you want them to know before you head out.
Okay, well, my website is nicholaspadams.com. You can find me on Amazon. I think if you just search Nicholas P. Adams, for some reason, Nicholas Adams is actually a common name in the writing world. I'm on Twitter at Nicholas A. Writes. I'm on Facebook, Nicholas P. Adams. I'm on Instagram at Nicholas A. Writes. I'm also on Goodreads, so you can find me there. I love making new friends and finding people to read advanced reader copies. So if you want to be an ARC reader for me, you can sign up and be someone that sees the first draft of my works. And I think that's it. I think I've talked about myself enough. I can't hear you, Adrian.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I was muted while you were talking. For everybody at home, thank you so much for coming. Let me do that again. Everybody in the chat that's been throwing up questions, I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. We've run out of time, but Mr. Adams and I are going to record our podcast episode next, and I'll include these questions into that show. So if you want to hear the answers to the questions in the chat that we have not yet covered, come back on Thursday at 11 a.m. We'll have the video version of the podcast premiering right here on this channel. And if you prefer the audio version, you will find that on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, among others. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you again, Mr. Adams, for being with me. Stick around. We're going to do the next show in a second here. And for everybody at home, hey, come back again, because we're going to do this again on Sunday with AR Mirabal. So don't miss out on that one. It's going to be great. Here we go.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
All right.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. it sound right, boys.